Welcome to the Silicon Crucible, where we examine the tectonic shifts reshaping the very foundations of the global economy. For decades, semiconductors have been the unseen architects of our digital world, an essential component in everything from smartphones to fighter jets. Today, these tiny chips have ignited a fierce geopolitical struggle, transforming them from mere commodities into the most contested strategic assets on Earth. This battle is not just about technology. It's about power, national security, and the future of global supply chains. We stand at a pivotal moment, witnessing how nations and corporations are grappling for control over the very essence of modern life.
The global semiconductor market now exceeds $500 billion annually, a figure projected to nearly double within the next decade. This immense growth is driven by pervasive digitalization, the proliferation of AI, and the relentless demand for processing power across all industries. However, the inherent complexity and concentration of this industry created vulnerabilities that became acutely clear during recent global disruptions. We observed a startling fragility in a supply chain once optimized purely for efficiency, now struggling under the weight of unprecedented demand and unforeseen shocks.
For many of us, the abstract world of semiconductors became very real during the pandemic, when suddenly we couldn't buy new cars or even certain home appliances. Dealerships had empty lots, unable to receive vehicles because a single microchip, costing mere dollars, was unavailable. Gaming consoles vanished from shelves for months, frustrating millions of eager consumers globally. This was more than just an inconvenience. It was a visceral demonstration of how deeply dependent our daily lives are on these highly specialized components, which many of us never even thought about before. It forced a collective realization that the global economy's intricate machinery could grind to a halt over tiny pieces of silicon.
Governments globally have belatedly recognized that reliance on a geographically concentrated semiconductor supply chain poses an unacceptable strategic risk. For years, the imperative was cost optimization, leading to a profound centralization of advanced manufacturing in East Asia. This efficiency-driven model, however, left many nations dangerously exposed, particularly as geopolitical tensions escalated. The pandemic acted as a harsh awakening, forcing policymakers to confront the stark reality of their technological dependence on a handful of key players and regions. It shifted the focus from purely economic gains to broader national security interests.
The cracks in this hyper-efficient system have forced a fundamental re-evaluation of global industrial policy. We are witnessing a monumental effort to redraw the map of semiconductor production, driven by factors far more complex than simple market demand. This strategic pivot marks a new era where economic decisions are increasingly intertwined with national security imperatives and geopolitical rivalries. The underlying structural drivers reveal an industry uniquely vulnerable to such shifts due to its unparalleled complexity and capital intensity.
The fabrication of advanced semiconductors demands staggering capital investment, often billions of dollars for a single new foundry. These fabs require cleanroom environments 10,000 times cleaner than a hospital operating room, equipped with highly specialized machinery like extreme ultraviolet lithography tools. A single EUV machine, essential for leading-edge chips, can cost upwards of $200 million and is exclusively manufactured by ASML in the Netherlands. This creates an enormous barrier to entry, explaining why only a handful of companies globally can produce the most advanced chips. The research and development cycles are equally punishing, requiring constant innovation and massive, sustained investment just to stay competitive at the leading edge.
This extreme concentration means that innovations for our next-generation smartphones or medical devices are largely dependent on decisions made by a very small number of boardrooms, primarily in Taiwan and South Korea. When there's a disruption in one of these facilities, or a political decision impacts their operation, the ripple effect on consumer technology is immediate and widespread. It also limits consumer choice indirectly, as fewer manufacturers dictate the pace and direction of technological advancements that ultimately reach us. The illusion of a vast, competitive market at the consumer level belies the tightly controlled oligopoly that produces the fundamental building blocks of those very products.
National security imperatives are now the paramount drivers in the semiconductor industry, superseding traditional economic efficiencies. The United States, for example, views advanced semiconductors as critical infrastructure and a cornerstone of future military and economic dominance. This perception is fueling massive legislative initiatives like the CHIPS and Science Act, allocating over $52 billion to incentivize domestic manufacturing and research. China, facing stringent export controls on advanced technology, is concurrently pouring hundreds of billions into its own domestic semiconductor industry, aiming for technological self-sufficiency. This creates a global subsidy race where governments are essentially bidding to localize this vital strategic capability, transforming the very architecture of global trade and investment.
This shift has created a fascinating divergence between institutional responses and the everyday consumer experience. Governments and corporations are pouring unprecedented resources into re-engineering supply chains, while consumers grapple with the lingering effects of scarcity and rising costs. The promise of future resilience comes with a significant price tag, one that is not always immediately apparent to the end user, but impacts their economic realities profoundly. This bifurcation highlights the complex trade-offs being made in pursuit of strategic independence.
Government subsidies for chip manufacturing are unprecedented in scale, with the U.S. CHIPS Act and similar initiatives in Europe and Japan creating a veritable gold rush for semiconductor companies. Intel, for example, is planning multi-billion-dollar new fabs in Arizona and Ohio, while TSMC is building new plants in Arizona and potentially Germany, all heavily supported by public funds. However, these incentives carry significant risks of market distortion and potential oversupply in specific segments, leading to eventual price volatility. Furthermore, the sheer cost of replicating existing sophisticated supply chains domestically means that the efficiency gains of globalization are being consciously traded for strategic resilience, a quantifiable economic cost.
For consumers, the immediate impact of these strategic shifts is often felt through persistently higher prices for electronic goods and even longer product life cycles for existing devices. The cost of manufacturing chips domestically, even with subsidies, is frequently higher than production in established Asian hubs, and these increased costs inevitably trickle down to the final product. While we hear about grand investments in new fabs, the tangible benefit to our wallets or the speed of our device upgrades is not yet clear. In fact, it often feels like we are paying more for the same or even less innovation. We are caught between the aspiration of supply chain resilience and the reality of a global marketplace that is becoming more expensive and potentially less efficient for consumers.
Corporations in the semiconductor sector find themselves navigating an increasingly complex and politically charged landscape. They are pressured to adopt friend-shoring or ally-shoring strategies, aligning their investment decisions with geopolitical alliances rather than purely economic logic. Export controls, particularly those imposed by the U.S. on China, demand companies to meticulously track the origin of technology and destination of their products, adding layers of compliance and potential market exclusion. Companies like ASML have faced direct government intervention, restricting the sale of their advanced lithography equipment to certain markets. This environment forces corporations to balance market access and profitability with national security dictates, profoundly altering their global strategies and investment patterns.
As we look ahead, the future of the global economy will be inextricably linked to the trajectory of this semiconductor battle. The decisions made today, from government funding to corporate investment and regulatory frameworks, will determine the contours of tomorrow's technological landscape. We must project the macro implications of these shifts, considering not just the economic gains, but the potential for fragmentation and friction. The Silicon Crucible is forging a new order, but its final shape remains uncertain and potentially volatile.
Forward projections indicate a likely fragmentation of the global semiconductor market into distinct technological ecosystems driven by national security considerations and diverging standards. This will inevitably lead to increased capital expenditure globally as nations pursue redundant or parallel manufacturing capabilities. The era of just-in-time efficiency is giving way to just-in-case resilience, which fundamentally shifts cost structures. We can anticipate higher average unit costs for advanced semiconductors and potentially slower rates of innovation as research and development efforts become less globally integrated. This creates a less efficient global allocation of resources, meaning the overall technological progress for humanity may suffer, even as individual nations gain perceived security.
The long-term impact on affordability and access to cutting-edge technology for consumers is a significant concern. If market fragmentation and increased production costs lead to permanently higher prices for devices, it could exacerbate the digital divide, making advanced technology less accessible in certain regions or for lower-income demographics. Furthermore, if innovation slows due to less integrated global R&D, consumers might see fewer groundbreaking products and slower generational improvements. The very definition of "made in" for high-tech goods will evolve, becoming more a statement of geopolitical allegiance than simple origin, potentially impacting brand loyalty and consumer choice.
The geopolitical competition for semiconductor dominance will undoubtedly intensify, with nations continuing to weaponize trade and technology policy. We anticipate an ongoing escalation of export controls, industrial subsidies, and strategic alliances aimed at controlling key nodes of the semiconductor supply chain. This will result in a more localized, strategically controlled, but inherently less efficient global semiconductor ecosystem. The tension between economic interdependence and national security will remain a defining feature, shaping investment flows, trade agreements, and technological collaboration for decades to come. The future promises continued friction and a challenging environment for companies and policymakers alike as they navigate this complex terrain.